It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
It was a day of infamy, a sneak attack in the middle of the night, murdering officials and their wives and children, and of course all of their neighbours. They thought it was a spiffing success. They laughed. Oh, how they laughed. They're not laughing now. The empire has struck back night after night and again this evening, with even more dramatic retaliations coming in from Iran. Donald Trump has done an Anna Baerbock, having started out saying this was nothing to do with him. Then when he thought it was a great success, claiming the credit for it, now he has nothing whatsoever to do with it, Gov, and is ready to facilitate peace talks and trade between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Zionist settler apartheid genocidal state of Israel. You couldn't make it up. We don't have to. This is the Global University of the Airwaves. We'll set you straight over the next 2 hours. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
On Sky News last night, they asked Professor Marandi, our chief guest tonight on the mother of all talk shows, if Iran would return to the negotiating table. As Professor Marandi, in his inimitable, matchless, peerless style, pointed out with his trademark smile, Iran was at the negotiating table when the sneak attack was mounted in the dead of night. Like thieves, they stole in, having infiltrated Iran for many months in advance. They did succeed in killing a lot of folks, as President Obama might put it. But the graveyards are full of irreplaceable people, as Colonel Douglas Macgregor has just opined. All of these people have now been replaced, and there doesn't seem, on the face of it, to have been any loss of effectiveness in Iran's ability to retaliate. We have warned on the mother of all talk shows, with Scott Ritter, with Professor Marandi, with guest after guest after guest, that Iran has the means to defend itself. It is not the Gaza Strip, and even there, with their bare hands if necessary, the fighters are defending themselves from Israeli evasion. This is not the Taliban. This is not Afghanistan. This is a country of almost 100 million people with a military-industrial complex so highly developed that customers are queuing at the door to buy their wares. And in particular, we have warned over and over again that the so-called Iron Dome was made of paper. We have warned over and over again that the THAAD was bad. We have warned every time that the Patriot will betray you. It is no pleasure to see civilian targets being bombed in Tel Aviv, at least not for me. Though I've got to tell you, having just returned from the area, that the Islamic Republic of Iran often demonized, destabilized, subverted, multiply sanctioned, derided, insulted, has become the hero of the global South, has become the hero of the global East, has become the hero of the Arab and Muslim world, has become the hero of a very substantial minority of the people of the Western imperial countries themselves. A huge, unchallengeable global majority wants Iran to prevail in this conflict. But for me, having been under bombs in Ethiopia, in Beirut, in the south of Lebanon, I take no pleasure whatsoever in the aerial pulverizing of built-up areas. Although it turns out that Israel has placed its command and control centers underneath hospitals. I'm not making that one up. That happens to be the truth. Israel has placed its military assets amidst densely populated civilian populations. I'm not making that one up either. Every accusation is a confession, as people now very frequently point out. But the truth is, Israel had this coming. Israel is getting a bloody good hiding. They laughed on night one. They're not laughing now. And they'll be laughing even less by the end of this night if the statements coming from Tehran are anything like accurate. The way I look at it is that Israel is practically, to all intents and purposes, certainly against hypersonic ballistic missiles, completely defenseless. The expensive American defensive shields are not worth the paper that they are made of. And so, if Iran has the supply, the demand is certainly there from the global majority. Keep on firing these missiles until you have taught this bloodthirsty regime in Tel Aviv a lesson they will never forget. Indeed, I just heard Scott Ritter say on another program that this actually could be the end of Israel. I very much doubt that that is true. But it will be a different Israel that will emerge from this conflict. And the longer that the conflict goes on, the more the change will be. Donald Trump, as I said, has done an Anna Baerbock. He started out with what he thought was plausible deniability, denying that America was involved in this attack upon Iran. Although that is plainly ridiculous, and not just for the obvious reason that every aircraft, every missile, every bomb, every bullet, every shekel is given to Israel by the taxpayer of the United States, but not just for that reason. It's clearly obvious that American military assets were assisting the Israeli attack. The US Air Force sweeps in Iraq were for a reason. They were, on the first night, an attempt to ensure that the Iranian retaliation would not get off the ground, at least not in that direction. The American puppets in the region, like the dwarf king of Jordan, are of course entirely controlled by the United States of America. The truth is that the United States is involved, but there is an open question, still open, as to what extent they want to get further involved. And that, I think, is something that Netanyahu cannot rely upon. It's said, maybe false, there's a lot of false information in the ether, that the United States has warned Netanyahu not to try to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei. This has been denied from Tel Aviv, but it has not been denied from Washington. The United States' latest pronunciamento on Truth Social, because that's how diplomacy is done these days, calls for the United States to be allowed to mediate a peace. Donald Trump spent an hour on the phone with President Putin just earlier today. And in that, he said on Truth Social that both presidents demand that this war should end. Well, if that is the American position, they are in a unique place to bring it to an end. They simply have to order the Netanyahu government to cease and desist and make reparation for the killings and the damage that they have done with what is a completely illegal attack, a sneak attack, a Pearl Harbor sneak attack. Every person that they've killed, every dollar of damage that they have done was illegally imposed and must be repaired at the expense of Israel and its allies. The United States is in a position to order Netanyahu to cease and desist the mass killing of the people in Gaza, in Jerusalem, of the West Bank. The President of the United States can order Netanyahu to cease and desist his latest wave of settlement plans, rendering null and void any possibility ever of a Palestinian state emerging in the West Bank. Now, none of these things is likely to happen, but all of these things must be demanded. And lastly, President Trump is in a position, and colon cancer may be given and cited as the reason, to demand that Netanyahu finally departs the scene. As long as he does not, the global perception will be that this is Netanyahu's war. It's a war being fought to save Netanyahu's skin. Now, I myself don't personally believe that. Neither do I believe that the removal of Netanyahu and his replacement by one or other of the ghouls at the top of the Zionist tree from all of the Zionist parties, but the world believes that this is Netanyahu's crime. And Donald Trump, if he wants to center the United States in any peacemaking position, then he's going to have to demand that and all of these things. But these things are unlikely to happen, and the war will continue. It's my belief that Israel has bitten off more than it's able to chew. And I'm not just saying this now, I've been saying it throughout this crisis. And my guests on the show have been saying this throughout this crisis. Anyone who saw the hypersonic missile at lightning speed striking the oil refinery, vital oil refinery in Haifa last night, already knows that these missiles cannot be stopped. And Israel's defense systems will not be able to repel them. The only question will be, how many missiles does Iran have? Now, I'm not privy to that information. I was invited whilst in Tehran to visit some military places, but I declined. Not my cup of tea. But I'm certainly willing to guess that Iran has thousands and maybe tens of thousands of these missiles. And given that they're coming in at 300 or so per night, and the ballistics, hypersonic ballistics, are coming in at 1 or 2 per night, Iran is much better placed for the long war, especially as it has public support almost throughout the world, while Israel, which has virtually no support in the world, only from the leaders of the empire and its satrapies, not even its Arab satrapies, none of them, they are all quailing at the possibility that Iran will blame them for United States and Israeli perfidy and the bombing campaign, which is undoubtedly hurting, harming innocents, slaughtering innocents, like a family that was slaughtered last night in Tehran in toto. But the satrapies in Europe, of course, have been already unmasked. Germany, stupidly, was caught with the German refueling aircraft switching on its transponder very briefly over Syria. That's the Syria that they destroyed over the last 10 years and more, and thought that with the puppet regime now in Damascus, they can use the airspace of Syria at will. And a German refueler, a tanker plane, was caught electronically, momentarily, but caught forever, refueling Israeli warfighters on their way to Iran. So the Germans are in the war. Keir Starmer, despite presiding over the lowest approval ratings of any British Prime Minister in the entire history of polling, and presiding over a country that is rapidly sliding into the status of third world slum, has sent our brave men and women of the Royal Air Force to the Middle East. He has denuded Britain's defences of our own island and sent it to the Middle East, and, quote, has not ruled out, and neither did the hateful Rachel Reeves, his Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's paying for all this. She wouldn't rule out either those assets being used to defend Israel. And of course, the broadcast section of the British state, Sky News, the BBC, are firing on all cylinders, but they are finding it increasingly difficult to find an audience that believes them. Truth is, Israel is in big, big trouble now. And those that have supported Israel are in even bigger trouble. They're going against the wishes of their own people, and their own assets, if deployed in the war zone, are in very real danger of being destroyed. We don't have many Air Force jets, but if they start being blown out of the sky, and if our brave airmen, sailors, even soldiers begin to come home in boxes, then never mind World War III, this limited regional war itself may bring down their governments completely. The other issue that I want to discuss is much less consensual, and it relates to the poll that we're running this evening. Would Netanyahu have attacked a nuclear-armed Iran? Now, this is not the first time I'm saying this. I have said this in Tehran publicly. It's not the first time I've said it on air. I've even said it on Iranian TV publicly. It is an act of folly. There are multiple acts of folly. Believing Donald Trump was an act of folly. Having top commanders living at home with their families on the night of infamy was a folly. But not having made a nuclear weapon when you can make one is itself a folly. It's really very simple. If Iran had nuclear weapons, as is always alleged, this would not be happening. Israel would not be attacking Iran. America wouldn't dream of threatening to attack Iran if Iran had nuclear weapons. If I can put it very colloquially, succinctly, nobody will ever attack North Korea. They'll sanction it, they'll isolate it, they'll laugh at it, but they will never, ever attack it. Nobody will ever attack Pyongyang. Nobody will ever bomb Pyongyang, because Pyongyang has a government that is bristling with nuclear weapons and has the balls to use them in extremis. And so, given that Iran has, since the triumph of the Islamic Revolution, been surrounded by states which hate it and want to regime change it, who are nuclear armed, it is a folly for Iran not to have a nuclear weapon. I know there are people who so hate nuclear weapons that they don't like to hear me talk this way. And I hate them. I've been arrested at the British nuclear weapons base at Faslane and tossed into Greenock jail and didn't even get a blanket on a cold winter's night. I know that people consider that nuclear weapons are qualitatively different from all other weapons, being unlimited in space and time, and of course they are. But if you are in the crosshairs of not just Israel with its hundreds of undeclared, illegally acquired, illicitly held nuclear weapons, and if you are in the crosshairs of the second greatest nuclear armed power in the world, the United States of America, you really can't avoid the conclusion that you must get yourself a nuclear weapon if you scientifically, technically, and financially can do so. And that's why I say that the earthquake of 4.3 on the Richter scale in Baluchistan this evening near the Iranian-Pakistani border, for Iran's sake, I hope it was an underground nuclear test. It's all coming up over the next 2 hours. The peerless Professor Marandi from Tehran, live. He's up right after this. Stay tuned. I don't believe that the mainland European countries give a toss about Britain, and I'm certain that the United States would not sacrifice itself for Britain. That's why I say Britain is completely marginalized. As for the Trident missiles, of course, if the United States, which has dual control over these missiles, gave permission for them to be launched, of course, they would incinerate Russian cities. But what good would that do us? Because we'd all be dead, including the people that fired the missiles. You feel me?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
And a big hello to our record audience all over the platforms, but especially on TikTok, a new TikTok record being established right now. We've got a poll, of course, and that is looking like a record poll also. Would Netanyahu have attacked a nuclear-armed Iran? Yes or no? The total number of votes cast so far, and I'm only just announcing it, is 45,536. You can vote on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll and on the YouTube stream. If you're watching now on the YouTube stream, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give the show a thumbs up, and tell all your friends and contacts that we're broadcasting live on that and all other platforms right now. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Well, our first guest this evening, it really needs no introduction from me now, though once upon a time he did, and he's never forgotten that fact. We helped to make Professor Seyed Marandi, the Professor of English Literature and Orientalism from the University of Tehran, a thing in the Western media. Now they can't get enough of them until he leaves them bleeding, metaphorically, on the floor of their Western mouthpiece television channels. He is the heavyweight champion of the world, Professor Seyed Marandi. Welcome back, always, to the mother of all talk shows, fresh from your triumphs against Sky and the BBC, which I think cancelled your broadcast, having seen you in the ring against Sky. It's undoubtedly true, is it not, that the empire already knows that the empire, as in the form of Iran, is well able to strike back and is striking back again right at this moment. Your thoughts, please.
Well, first I have to point out that you are the person who I have looked to throughout all these years, and I still think that you are far better than I and far more eloquent than I will ever be in your defense of the oppressed and the deprived. But I thank you very much for your kind words. Yes, indeed, I think that the tide has turned. The Israeli regime and the American regime, they thought that through deception, they could undermine Iran through terrorism. American AI companies right now are helping the Israeli regime target people in Tehran. To be very blunt, I've been asked to get rid of my cell phone, but I can't because that's how I work with the media. And so I'm facing a dilemma because I can no longer stay with my family or stay at my apartment building because I don't want to risk people in that building, because the Israeli regime, when they target someone, they target the entire building, bring it down. Just a couple of nights ago, they killed 65 people in a single building, something that the West doesn't care about, Western media, Western regimes. And today, 10 children were murdered in another building, and the list goes on. So this is how the United States and the collective West work together to help this genocidal regime carry out death and destruction, whether in Gaza, whether in Beirut, or whether in Tehran. We saw the so-called Minister of Defense or the Minister of Genocide say yesterday that he's going to burn Tehran. Well, he failed. But we also saw him before want to burn Gaza and burn Beirut. What is wrong with these monsters that they want to burn everyone? But in any case, the tide has turned. And while these are bitter days, the Iranians, no doubt, are going to overcome. And the Islamic Republic of Iran will continue to support the Palestinian cause and to continue sacrificing for the Palestinian children who are being starved as we speak. And we should never forget them. Even as the missiles are striking Israel, or as the Israeli regime is assassinating people in Iran, we should not forget that children are starving in Gaza. Families are being massacred on a daily basis in Gaza. But Iran will continue to struggle. It will overcome. There is no option but to defeat the Israeli regime, to make the regime regret that it attacked Iran. And we are seeing, despite the entire West supporting the Israeli regime, trying to block Iranian missiles, despite the fact that bases in Qatar and the Emirates and Bahrain and in Turkey and in Iraq are being used to help the regime, both offensively and defensively. And while the airspace of Iraq and Syria and Jordan are being used by these regimes to help this genocidal monster Netanyahu and his allies, we see that Iran is hammering the regime, Iran is punishing the regime, and this will continue and it will intensify until the regime is forced to kneel.
The terrorist threat that you alluded to there is such primitive levels that there are now exploding car bombs on the streets of Tehran, the method of operation of gangsters. They have agents. I see that a lot of Indian agents have been rounded up, accused of acting for Israel. They have a fifth column in Albania, which they paid for all these decades, which they say has now been sent back into Iran, though many of them have never been in Iran for 40 years. Don't know if they'll know their way around anymore, but they are seeking to destroy the Islamic Republic. The king in exile is on the sofas of American television. This is existential for you now, isn't it?
Yes, without a doubt. And they are using ISIS and Al-Qaeda elements in Iran to carry out these assassinations, to help them murder people. So ISIS and Al-Qaeda has been a tool not just in Syria or Iraq or in Libya or in Afghanistan, but also very much so in Iran. And as I said, American AI companies, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, all of these are being used together, and high-tech US companies, to help the Israeli regime carry out murder and slaughter. But again, as I said, I have no option. Either I have to discontinue doing interviews and I have to get rid of my cell phone as they've advised. That's not possible for me because I'd be silenced. Or I have to keep my cell phone and leave the family so that at least they are safe and my neighbors are safe and my neighborhood is safe. So this is the dilemma that many people in Iran, I assume, are facing. And this is all being carried out with the help of American citizens, American armed forces, European armed forces, European companies. All of them are working together against Iran. And you see that regional companies are either with them. No one is with the resistance. You know, let's be very clear. Except for Iran and Yemen, no government in this region is pro-resistance. All the others, it's just show. They're doing trade and business. There are groups that are opposed to the regime. There are people that are opposed to Zionism and ethno-supremacism. But the regimes, they're all in bed with the Israelis, and they are either actively helping them or they are allowing the Americans to use their territory to help the Israeli regime. And they did that with Yemen as well, when the Americans carried out that short-lived war against the people of the brave and courageous people of Yemen.
There may be no governments in the region, but there are other governments. The Russian government has a close relationship with Iran. China also. The BRICS countries, with one or two exceptions. To what extent is the regime change operation being mounted against Iran a part of the war against the BRICS?
I think it is a part of that. But I also think that the Israeli regime is something very special to these supremacists. The United States, the elites, and the European elites are captured by Zionists and neocons. And we see that as we speak, they are sacrificing Ukraine for these Zionists. They're taking away the air defenses of Ukraine for this Zionist, for this ethno-supremacist, racist, and genocidal regime. And They have destroyed Ukraine. They have used it as a tool for many years, but 3 or so years, it's been devastating to Ukraine. And after all the sacrifices that Ukraine made, and after being destroyed and wrecked, they just dump it and take their toys elsewhere, their tools elsewhere to support this ethno-supremacist genocidal regime. And I think that's a lesson that not only that should teach the Ukrainians not to trust the West, but it should teach the rest of the world that the West doesn't care about anyone. They'll use you and then they'll throw you away when they have other priorities. But the collective West is doing everything that it can to help this regime. When the regime bombed the Iranian embassy in Damascus, France, Germany, Britain supported the bombing of the embassy. And now that they're bombing Iran, again, these European companies are supporting aggression. They're supporting attacks on nuclear installations, where if there is leakage, many people could die, but they support it nevertheless. Why? Because they don't care about us. We are all amalek, George. We are all subhuman to these people. In fact, the reason why the Minister of Defense of the Israeli regime can say, I'm going to burn Tehran, I'm going to burn Beirut, or the Dahia Doctrine, or they speak about mowing the lawn in Gaza or burning Gaza. The reason why they can say this, and no one says anything about it in the West, is because it is acceptable for them. It is okay for them to do that because we are inferior beings. That's just the state. That is the reality. So the liberals in the United States and in Europe, they speak about 1,001 genders. But when it comes to genocide and ethnic cleansing and the Holocaust in Gaza, they're fine with it. Men can go, they will defend the right of men to play in women's sports, but they will not defend the children of Tehran who were slaughtered over the past few days. They will not defend the children in Lebanon who were slaughtered simply because Hezbollah was trying to draw forces away from Gaza to protect Gazan children. They will not do anything to support the children of Gaza because we are all Amalek, because we are inferior. When there's a chosen people, that means the rest of us are not worth much.
The president of Israel, Herzog, who posed at the beginning of the genocidal attack on Gaza, signing bombs with a grin for the camera, is considerably more sad today as he talks about bombing residential areas. How piquant is it to discover that Israel's command and control center is literally underneath a hospital? How piquant is it that the Iron Dome missiles are actually being fired by Israel from narrow residential streets, using their own people as human shields? Irony of ironies, surely.
Yes, but that is, for us, it is outrageous that the Western media will say nothing about it. They'll keep quiet. But when Netanyahu, for nearly 40 years, has been saying that Iran is on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon, Iran is weeks away, months away, a year or two away from developing a nuclear weapon, the Western media will not tell people that he's been lying for 4 decades. Every time he makes a new claim, he'll say, the Israeli regime sees it as I say regime, that the Israel sees it as Iran as an existential threat. They won't tell people that this is just the lie that they've been using all along, Western governments, the Israeli regime, Western think tanks. And they won't tell people that the facilities that they bombed that are linked to the nuclear program, all of these buildings that they bombed or are attempting to bomb, or these underground facilities which they can't have access to, all of them are regularly visited. IAEA inspectors visit these buildings, and they have never said that Iran has moved to develop a nuclear weapon. The board of governors of the IAEA is a political body, and it is dominated by the West. Whenever they are nearing a deal with Iran, they'll behave better. Whenever they want to put pressure on Iran, they'll rehash old accusations. So the political body and the head of the organization, which is under Western control, like all international bodies that were created post-World War II, they will say what the United States wants them to say. But none of the technical experts have ever said that Iran is moving towards a nuclear weapon. But this is not something that Western media will say. Just like we've seen over the last couple of nights, CNN and other outlets speaking about the children in Tel Aviv and elsewhere, where just a short distance away, they're starving 1 million children. They are starving a million children. The hypocrisy of these journalists, the hypocrisy of these governments, the hypocrisy of these NGOs, these human rights NGOs, the hypocrisy of the whole Western political establishment is mind-boggling. But it's something that we have to get used to. And Iran is going to resist. Iran will not allow them to overcome. Iran will not allow the Israeli regime to succeed. And hopefully, even though Trump has been hypocritical and he's been deceitful and he's been a part of this aggression, hopefully he will not get involved directly, because that will lead to a global catastrophe. That will lead to the destruction of these Arab family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf that host US bases. So the smart thing to do for Trump is to distance himself and, in fact, to put pressure on his allies, his genocidal allies, to be careful, because this could lead to a catastrophe where the entire world is affected in a way that would be far worse than 1929 and the 1930s. But in any case, whether the United States gets directly involved or not, Iran is going to punish the Israeli regime. And the Israeli regime is going to pay a price. Iran will force the regime to regret what it did. And ultimately, I believe this is what is going to lead to the fall of Netanyahu. Even though it's not going to change the regime, because the fall of Netanyahu is like Nazi Germany without Hitler. It's like ISIS with Abu Bakr Baghdadi. It's like Al-Qaeda where Julani becomes al-Shara. There's no difference. But I think that Netanyahu has gone too far, and he has effectively destroyed the Israeli regime, because the Israeli regime will have to face humiliation. They have shown that despite the entire West supporting it, they are completely vulnerable to one country, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the Islamic Republic of Iran will not relinquish the Palestinian people. It will not forsake the Palestinian people. And it will continue to support them until they're treated as equal human beings, and until you have equal rights for all people in Palestine. Something that in the West is outrageous. Human equality in the West is outrageous. And that is why we're so evil in their eyes. But that is a day that is approaching, God willing.
Let's suppose that this punishment that Iran is delivering every evening continues for 5 nights, maybe for 10 nights, maybe for more. If Trump picks up the phone and says, look, I think this has gone far enough. Let's return to the status quo ante. Meet me in Oman a week next Tuesday. What would the Iranian response be, do you think?
I don't think it's going to be like before. The situation has changed, and the Iranians will have new demands. The equation has changed, George. You know this because you've lived through it. You know it better than I. The Israeli regime has never been humiliated like this before. Every night they're vulnerable, despite the fact that the entire NATO apparatus is there, and they've given up the air defenses of Ukraine and left them to be attacked in order to protect their ethno-supremacist genocidal monsters. Despite all that, they are being humiliated every night, and today they were humiliated during the day as well. this will continue. Iran will push this to a point where the regime recognizes that this was a catastrophic mistake. And I think that is already happening. We are already seeing messages coming to Tehran from the French president, the Emir of Qatar, who is in their camp, whose air base is being used by the Americans to help the Israeli regime. And also, the Americans are sending multiple messages to Iran that we are not a part of this, we had nothing to do with it. Whereas the Iranians have evidence that and it is clear that they were involved. And even Trump's statements on the first day indicate clearly that the United States was involved. But the more recent post of Trump seems to indicate that things are not going as well as planned. And that despite the initial shock that they hope to impose on Iran and cause some sort of collapse, that has not happened. And that shows the strength of Iran, that despite the collective West supporting this act of aggression, that Iran, within hours, was able to regroup and now is going to gradually turn the tide. They are carrying out assassinations in Tehran and elsewhere using drones. They are being supported by the West and Western intelligence agencies. In fact, the methods that are being used against Iran are identical to the methods used to strike the strategic bombers in Russia. The same people who organized and worked to bring about that operation were involved in preparing for these days in Tehran. And I think that is very telling.
Now, you don't make these decisions any more than you make any of these political and military decisions. You are an academic, albeit an extremely persuasive one, which is why they might try to kill you. But it seems to me that the case I've been making, and which you have contested several times, that Iran, like North Korea, is a country that simply must arm itself to the extent of its technological and scientific capability. Otherwise, it can forever fall victim to these kind of sneak attacks. The Israelis do not declare that they are thinking of using a nuclear bomb, but they have them and they could use them. But you are, as a matter of policy, political, theological policy, have set yourselves against the acquisition of nuclear weapons. Do you think that calculus might have changed at all as a result of this week?
It is changing the mood in Iran, there's no doubt. And ironically, George, Trump has done more than anyone else to push Iran closer to a nuclear weapon. It's Trump's doing. The Iranians have always disliked weapons of mass destruction. You know the history. During the war, when the West gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons, I survived 2 chemical attacks, both mustard gas and a nerve agent. Others didn't, and others are still dying as we speak, a very slow and painful death after decades. Iranian politicians and military officials went to Ayatollah Khomeini, Imam Khomeini, and asked permission to produce chemical weapons. And he said no. He said, this is a horrible weapon. And they didn't do it. And afterwards, the current leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, said the same. So that is a moral issue and an ideological issue. But the problem is, there's also another problem, and that is that if you build a nuclear weapon, then you encourage other countries to follow suit and also to build nuclear weapons. And we have neighbors, Central Asia, the Caucasus, West Asia, and this could create a much more dangerous environment. So the preference is not to have a weapon. However, when the United States is threatening Iran with destruction, when the Israeli regime is threatening Iran with destruction, when you see a racist, apartheid, genocidal regime that has the full support of the West, that has no red lines. It has no red lines because we're amalek. We are worthless to them. We are worthless people, and the West is fine with that. That is why they allow them to starve Gaza. They help them starve Gaza. They're doing it together. They're helping to destroy and bomb Gaza. You see British intelligence involved. You see European nations. None of them will sanction the Israeli regime because they're in bed with these genocidal maniacs. So when there are no red lines, the argument among many in Iran is that for survival, we have to move in that direction. So they're tilting the balance of power, or the balance, let's say the balance of in the argument, or the power of one argument over another. They're tilting that balance. They're tilting the debate in one direction. So Trump himself, through duplicity, through dishonesty, through brutality, through supporting death and destruction, through murdering Iranian children, and through threatening Iran, and through the airstrikes by the Israeli regime against Iranian citizens, Iranian civilians, and the Iranian nuclear program, they are pushing Iran in that direction. And ultimately, if it becomes an existential threat, then Iran's nuclear posture will change. And this would be something that I think would be very unfortunate, but I believe would be necessary.
Well, I know I speak for all of our audience who value you so highly, that we pray for your safety and urge you to find another way of keeping in touch with the media. Change your phone number, do whatever is necessary, because there's not two Professor Mohammed Marandis. May God preserve you. Thank you very much for your time at this extraordinary moment in your country's history. Professor Marandi, God bless you. Professor Seyed Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran, coming to you live from Tehran with a master class here on the Global University of the Airwaves. Let me take a quick break, then your calls coming next. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Already a record, I think, on the poll. 52,140 people have voted. Would Netanyahu have attacked a nuclear-armed Iran? Yes or no? I've got to tell you that about a quarter of the audience thinks the answer is yes, and 3/4 think the answer is no. So if you want to affect that balance, that poll, get voting now on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Now, you just heard about the podcast. We're in the top 5 in Malaysia this week, where I hope soon to be to celebrate the 100th birthday of Tun Mahathir Mohamad, the erstwhile Prime Minister, long-serving Prime Minister of Malaysia. We're in the top 40 in Japan, Spain, Morocco, and Indonesia. to my good wife Gayatri's great delight. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code in the corner of your screen now. Now, we've got a record audience, as I said earlier, on TikTok. More than 110,000 people are watching the show on TikTok. So keep hitting the like button on your screen. Let's get the likes up to 200,000. It's a record audience all round, as well it should be. At times of crisis, everyone with any sense would head to the global university of the airwaves. That is the mother of all talk shows. And one of our professors is Tommy in Glasgow, the legend on Iran and Israel. Go on yourself, Tommy.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you doing, dear brother George?
By the grace of God, good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Alhamdulillah. Can I just say to Professor Marandi, God bless. You are doing a remarkable job. It has not gone unlost to yourself, George, and to anybody listening there. What he said tonight, he refuses to be bowed. He's been warned about leaving his phone alone, and he is saying no. God bless him wherever he is in the world. May God give him strength. May Allah protect him and allow him to continue his efforts in trying to free the world from the tyranny of this evil Zionist regime. The evil Zionist regime is taking a terrible beating tonight and for the last few nights. And alhamdulillah, the people of the world who are oppressed, who are seeing what is happening to Palestine for the last 20 months, we stand there in celebration, not that we want people to die, not that we want people to suffer, but in celebration that this most evil, despotic regime who burns people alive in tents, who starves innocent children to death tonight and every night for the last 20 months, what they've been doing, then they're getting their comeuppance like they deserve. And so God forgive me and God forgive us all for celebrating when we see bombs hitting Tel Aviv and Haifa. These are stolen lands. And Nakba over 77 years ago, God bless Iran for finally standing up to this evil colonial empire. They respect no one. I'm talking about the illegal Zionist entity. And unless they are put in their place, Allahu Akbar, God bless Iran for standing up for the Palestinian people. These are Shia brothers to the Sunni majority in Palestine. And the catastrophe of the Arab rulers, the Arab world, their Sunni brothers in Saudi and United Arab Emirates and Qatar and all these places, they do not stand with Palestine. Iran stands with Palestine, and they always have, and they always will. Professor Marandi, God bless you. George, your show deserves to be listened to everyone. The mainstream media has lost. You're the greatest little mom and pop podcast that the world has ever produced. Your university stands above everything. Keep retweeting, keep reliking this show here. George, can I ask one favour as well? I said last year I was going to start a little podcast called Boats, the brother of all talk shows. I had to scuttle that little boat last year for various reasons. But now, tonight, at midnight UK time, on Rumble, people to search Boats TV, a happy news channel from Iran, the Islamic Republican Army newsroom in the deep dark bunker of Glasgow. No Zionists allowed. Zionists, run to your bunker like rats, because you are now going to be scuttled. You may return to your stolen land. Ashkenazi, kid-on Jews. You're not Jews. You're Zionist, murdering, genocidal Nazi pigs. And it's the time for the Palestinian to be free. Free Palestine and free the greatest mom and pop podcast, MOATS TV. God bless. BoatsTV.com on Rumble tonight, George, to carry on. God bless you. God bless Palestine. And for all the wonderful people out there, God bless.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm glad to see the Boats is being relaunched. That's the brother of all talk shows. No organic connection, but imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. That's on Rumble with the legend that is Tommy in Glasgow. Comments on YouTube can be left by scanning the QR code on the screen now, and I'll try and read some of them out. Chris Moyo says, Operation Rising Mouse, not Lion. And Pebbles McCann says Netanyahu was not prepared for the worst attacks from Iran. This is a test of their new missiles. They have not engaged fully yet. And, pardon me, Bindi Boxer says the Egyptian army stopped the aid convoy to Gaza. They deported and arrested peaceful marchers in support of Gaza. It was a disgrace to Egypt. Amen to that. Joseph, 1948, says, Professor Marandi, a moral lighthouse. Very beautifully expressed, Joseph. And Lawrence Tilley says, Professor, it is not one genocidal murderous regime. It is two regimes committing murder and genocide around the world. Let's hit the switchboard where Will is in California on Israel and the US, that very special relationship. On you go, Will. What would you like to say?
Happy Father's Day, George. And what did Trump know?
Thank you. And to all fathers around the world.
Exactly. What did Trump know and when did he know it? We should have just let Marco Rubio's statement stand Thursday night when he said it was a unilateral attack by Israel. It was simple and politically strategic. Then Trump puts out a truth tweet Friday basically saying he supported the strike. Trump also said, I always knew the date. I know everything. He told the New York Post and Reuters, I believe. But, George, there were still peace talks with Iran scheduled for this weekend, suggesting he did not know Israel would strike Thursday, or he just allowed Netanyahu to strike with our permission. But I think beyond that, Trump maybe just got played by Netanyahu's strike, and Trump's ego was damaged and embarrassed on his big birthday weekend. He's now walked it all back, saying we had nothing to do with the attack on Iran. This is too much Lindsey Graham and not enough Thomas Massey for me.
Well, of course, you might be right. I think that you're wrong, but you might be right. And undoubtedly, the opening statement from Rubio would have been the best framing of a plausible deniability alibi. But it was completely destroyed by Trump's rush of blood to the head when he thought that the early strikes by Israel on terrorist targets, families sleeping in their bed and so on, he thought it had all gone so well, he couldn't bear not to get any of the credit for it. So he then made clear in multiple posts and multiple verbal interviews, I saw his lips move and heard him say them, where he claimed that he was in on the whole thing. And only when it became clear the scale, precision, and deadliness of the Iranian retaliation, did he do an Anna Baerbock and do a 360-degree turn. And that's where we now are. And he's compounding that Baerbockism by offering to host trade talks between Israel and Iran. Trade between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Zionist state of Israel. Sometimes I fear, and I know there will be people upset by this, but I must say it. I fear that Trump is becoming Joe Biden. I fear that he is becoming so demented, so contradictory, so obviously failing to grasp salient facts and hypotheticals that I'm beginning to wonder if he's losing the place. I'm beginning to wonder if the United States has not re-elected Joe Biden 2.0. Will, thanks for that call. A big thanks to this week's top donors who this week visited the MOATS.tv website: Raymond Papworth, Mohammed Hussein, Robert Harker, Alberto Perez, and Victor Oritz. All of you have been extremely generous, and I'm deeply grateful to you. And I hope that your generosity will encourage others in the course of this evening or after the show to visit MOATS.tv and use the user-friendly means, better than we've ever had before, of leaving a donation, which keeps the show on twice a week. Remember, we were originally a once-a-week show, but we realized that the audience really required twice a week or even more, given the pace of events, the significance of events. But we will not be able to sustain even 2 shows per week without your generous donations. So please be a MOATS.tv donor tonight. Let me take a quick break, and then it is the one and only Garland Nixon, radio talk show host and political analyst, on how all of this looks from Washington, D.C. He's always worth watching. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
You know, and it's a very, thank you for, you know, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, you know. I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary McLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, you know, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, Garland Nixon joins me now, and I'm always a happy man when he does, even when the issues that we're being forced to endlessly discuss are far from happy. Garland, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. You had Trump's birthday military parade go past your door yesterday. I've got to say, as someone who was at the victory parade in Moscow last month, and as someone who frequently marvels at the changing of the guard and British military parades, it didn't fill me with any great confidence that the US Army is itching to get into a new Middle East war and is likely to do well if it does. Tell us about that from your point of view.
Well, I think right now, the traditional neocon elements are always itching to get into another war, particularly with Iran. I think one of the things that's interesting right now is Donald Trump is in very serious trouble politically. You know, he really doesn't have, in the establishment politics, he really doesn't have much of a support base. His support base is solely the MAGA movement, which is a kind of a working class voter movement. Yeah, I'm on the left. I have ideological differences from them, but realistically, they're the only real political movement in America that can manifest itself at the you know, by putting politicians in office. And if you look online and you look at what's happening, they are very upset. They're very concerned that Donald Trump may drag the U.S. in a war, and they're saying this is not what we voted for. So interestingly, as Donald Trump did his big you know, birthday celebration, that didn't, you know, in the MAGA movement, they weren't concerned about that much. There wasn't a lot of, you know, celebration there. There's more anger and concern. And of course, there's the manufactured, you know, No Kings, whatever that is, No Kings protest that's run by Ezra Levin and Leah Greenberg, a couple of, you know, former State Department, former Obama officials that, I'll put it like this. Leah Greenberg is one of the two people who really put the whole No Kings protest together. And she worked for Tom Perello for years, who also happened to be the CEO of George Soros's Open Society Institute. So no King's protest was a fraud. Trump's thing didn't, really hit big. So everybody here is really concerned about the fallout, and I use that word guardedly, of the Iran conflict.
Now, you've just had one imbecile as your president, and I think it's common knowledge now that Joe Biden was literally demented for much, if not all, of his presidential term. It must concern you that we might be heading in that direction again, because Donald Trump's statements one day to another on issues which could lead to World War III are so demented, so contradictory, so utterly at odds with each other, you wonder at the cognizance, sanity of the person saying them and writing them. Either he was lying, that America had nothing to do with this, or he's paying for a woman in Tel Aviv who does exactly what she likes, whether he keeps on paying or not. That's known as a cuck.
Well, any way you look at it, the actions that Donald Trump has taken, the statements that he's made over the last few days have completely destroyed his credibility. As you said, they've been so contradictory. It seems as though when it appears that Israel's attack is going well, he jumps up and takes all the credit for it. Look at that. I was part of it. I helped to hoodwink and bamboozle these people using negotiations as a ploy so we could attack them, which anyone can see why a head of state would not benefit from taking those actions. But when things turn around within 24 hours, and it seems like Israel's getting mauled by Iranian missiles, he suddenly turns around and says, "We want this war over. This thing has to end. I talked to Putin. He agrees with me. It has to end." 24 hours after he was celebrating that it started, and you have to ask yourself, as you said, can't he understand, or can he actually see that he looks, let's be honest, he's making himself look like either he's becoming demented or he's just a fool, because no intelligent person would do that, and not recognizing how absurd these statements are when put in the context of a 24-hour period.
Now, of course, he appears tall, because of the flatness of the surrounding political landscape. The Democrats are still in a state of complete disarray, and in any case are embarked on a new pussy hat crusade paid for by George Soros and co. Amongst the Republicans, though, I noticed that Steve Bannon is firing hourly broadsides at the possibility of Trump taking us into a new, at least all-out regional war. At worst, the danger of it becoming a world war. He's representing that blue-collar trend that you refer to, isn't he? Who's representing the opposite? Is Trump isolated? Is what I'm really asking. Is there anybody with any sense on his own side that can pull him into line?
You have to suspect, based on his latest moves, his latest inclinations to try to get out of that someone in his inner circle, that people within his inner circle that are advising him of the significant military and political trouble that he's in. And he has a pretty good political intuition. So I think, he looks online. I think he's looking at the posts of people saying, Douglas McGregor is out there. People should read his posts. That people who he know well and who have supported him are telling him, you're in deep and serious trouble. Many of us discussed it beforehand. beforehand and said basically what would happen if Donald Trump dragged the United States into this war, and the neocons would love this. They would get their war against Iran, but additionally, it would be the end of MAGA, that it would wipe MAGA out. And I think that we are on the verge. If Donald Trump does this, God knows how many bad things could happen. We could drag other superpowers into it. But for sure here, that will be the end of MAGA. And once Donald Trump is fully isolated from MAGA, the machine will crush him. The machine, once the mainstream Republicans don't have to worry about going home and having the their own MAGA base vote them out of office. Once they abandon Donald Trump, then they'll crush him. They'll impeach him. They'll take him out any way they can. They won't have to, do the sniper on the roof trick. They can just do it politically, and they will if Donald Trump keeps going in the direction he does. And here's the thing: it's not that someone else is isolating him. He's isolating himself with his moves.
Now, neither of us has a crystal ball, but you are an acute observer of the Washington scene. What do you think might come next in this story?
Well, there are two things here. Donald Trump is a hard one to figure out for this reason. The one thing I'll say about Donald Trump that kind of differentiates him from the neocons, people discuss, he wants peace, or he wants this, or he doesn't want this or that. In reality, the outcome is the intent. It doesn't matter what he wants or doesn't want. It only matters what the final outcome is, what is produced. And right now, based on what has happened, if Donald Trump does not use the reverse gear that he has, but if he doesn't, that means that the United States will get involved in Iran, and all bets are off. There's no guarantees that what will happen with Russia and China. And certainly at that point, I would imagine if you back Iran into a corner, they will close the Straits of Hormuz first. They may attack bases, and at that point, the U.S. Economy goes bad, and that is absolutely it for Donald Trump. But that may be the least of our problems if we get to that point.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the Samson option is always not far from the agenda of these Zionist leaders. The Samson option being the launching of Israel's illegally held nuclear weapons, at least 80 of them, when Mordechai Vanunu, the brave Jewish whistleblower, told us about them 35 years ago now. If that 80 has become 180 or 580, we really do have doomsday scenario. Even one Israeli nuclear weapon fired at Iran will mean the end of all the countries surrounding Iran. The very countries that Donald Trump returned from dripping in diamonds and gold just a few weeks ago.
Well, yeah, we know, that there's no telling what would happen. Certainly there's fallout. There is the end of the Western economy. I mean, people would be looking for a time machine to go back to 1929, to the good old days, if we end up seeing something happens of that level, because once basically the entire oil infrastructure in the Middle East is gone, that's pretty much it for, the West as we know it, and most of the world will be suffering. I would imagine that Russia has oil and they'd probably share it with their friends like China and India, but as far as the West, we probably wouldn't get a drop of it. But that would be terrible. So many people would die. It would be horrible. It's unthinkable, the levels that this could go to, which just goes to show the recklessness of the U.S. government as this empire unravels. It just goes to show the position that Donald Trump is in, as he seems to be very much incompetent and unable to navigate his way through these neocon inclinations all around him. It shows that he put this cabinet together of incompetent neocons, and right now we are all held hostage. Certainly, no one believes that we'd be better off with Kamala Harris, but the bottom line is what we're also seeing here is, to some extent, it doesn't matter all that much, because the machine behind it is the same. Right now, if we can get through we're just like this. Let's hope we make it through the next week or two. Who knows what's coming in the future? But we're in a very bad spot here.
Finally, Garland, what's the current state of play between your friend and mine, Elon Musk, and the Trump presidency? Has Trump done another baerbock on that? Is he now friends again with Musk, or are they still at daggers drawn?
As far as I can tell, they seem to be friends again. But, it's the politics of D.C., and you've heard this before. No permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. So while these people, so-called fought it out a little bit, they had a little bit of a pillow fight of words. The bottom line is, look, Elon Musk needs his multi-billion-dollar contracts. Donald Trump needs, just in case he needs more money for whatever reason, he needs a guy worth $300 or $400 billion in his camp. And no matter what little fights they have, when it's all over and done with, they need each other. They potentially need each other for things, and they'll come back together as, quote, friends. What I think we're saying is they were never really friends in the first place. They were business associates, and as business associates, they can brush off these kinds of things. We'll talk about it. We'll think they're angry at each other, but they're both looking at their bank accounts, their bottom lines, and what they need for financial advantage. And that's the only thing that really I think matters in their relationship from the beginning.
It was all just handbags at dawn. Garland Nixon, as always, thanks very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break then. It's your calls all the way to the social media news roundup with Gayatri. There are hundreds of new callers to the show tonight, so we're going to prioritize new callers over the next 40 minutes. Stay tuned. It's the mother of all talk shows.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it, I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Nobody does Trump jingles like the mother of all talk shows. By the way, we've got Roger Stone on the show on Wednesday night, a long time confidant of Donald Trump. You might say a constant and loyal right-hand man of Donald Trump right from the beginning. That'll be interesting, so put that in your diaries. But the first call of the second half is from Mohammed in Belgium, who wants to talk about Palestine. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for having me. How are you doing today?
Welcome. Alhamdulillah, very good. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. I would just like to quickly introduce myself. I am Mohammed, the founder of the Global March for Palestine. We are organizing an initiative where we would start off from the United Kingdom, and we want to go to a couple of countries to be able to raise proper pressure upon governments to act through a way of unity. simply said, I've met you years ago, Sir George, and I am a great fan of what you are doing. To me, you could be in a position of a one world order leader, and you could run it all. So what I've learned from your whole journey and from other journeys is we are missing unity. And that is the problem that we have, not just only with Palestine, but all around it, is we are not unified. Such a great example like yourself, who's been an activist for years upon years upon years. I hope you can agree to this one, is this unity is a big problem. And if we would be united and move forward as one, we would be able to achieve great things.
Amin. Mohammed, thank you for your kind words and for the work that you're doing. You're absolutely right to identify disunity as actually a stab in the back of the Palestinian people. The Palestine Solidarity Campaign has blacklisted me for 10 whole years for reasons which have zero to do with Palestine. And the Stop the War Coalition, exactly the same. So this disunity doesn't hurt me. I have no need to go on marches or to speak on platforms. I have my own platforms which reach a vastly greater number of people, and it saves me tramping through the streets in the British elements. So it doesn't harm me or hurt me, it hurts the cause. And as someone who organized multiple siege-breaking convoys, I'm more than happy to give you the benefit of that, make sure we know how to reach you, Mohammed. I'm willing to give you the benefit of my experience and to help you in any way that I can. Thanks very much for that. Here's some comments. Eye of Horus says Netanyahu is in Greece, so his own people don't kill him. I see that tweeted all over the place, but it isn't true, I'm afraid. Netanyahu has not been in Greece. He's been in a bunker in Tel Aviv throughout. Eladio Oliva sends 1,600 of something. Eladio, forgive me, I can't read what the symbol is of the currency, but I'm deeply grateful to it. And if you'll forgive me, I'm hoping it's pounds or dollars. No, it's Japanese yen. 1,600 Japanese yen. Eladio, very grateful to you. And my good wife will be hurriedly looking up the exchange rate to see how much that is. But I appreciate it. We've passed the point of no return, says Eladio. It will take decades to see a peaceful world. And Faye sends €5. Thanks, Faye. Says if Iran doesn't build the bomb, they will destroy their air defenses, military, and oil fields. If Iran builds the bomb, then they can only sanction Iran. And Snowy sends 25 Canadian dollars. Thanks, Snowy. What happened to the 9 Madeleine Freedom Flotilla members that are still detained in Israel? I don't know how many are still detained in Israel. I think most of them have now been deported. I have Horace again, says, as an old veteran, I can tell you these were not US frontline troops. They couldn't march. Well, I didn't want to say it in as many words, but it was the most shambolic marching I have ever seen of any army anywhere at any time. Peter is in Portishead and wants to talk about the US and Iran. Peter, welcome. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much, George. I was watching Scott Ritter being interviewed on the Jimmy Dore show by Aaron Mate a short while ago, and he unlocked
I watched a bit of that also. Yeah, tell me.
Well, it was the idea that with the present administration of the United States, it might be a much safer and more strategically sensible course for Iran not to pursue the bomb now, but to use its conventional weapons. Because if they pursued a bomb, the fear is, well, Scott Ritter outlined, that the Americans would, in his opinion, nuke Tehran or nuke the Iranians. And if someone like Scott Ritter is thinking that, who is really on the side of the Palestinian cause, really against Israel. But if that's his assessment, I have to take that into consideration, and I'm wondering what you think about his worries on that score.
Yeah, he's expressed them many times on here and in other places. And of course, I highly respect Scott Ritter's military, political judgments and analyses, but on this one, I don't share it. I think that the fear that Iran is going to develop a nuclear bomb will always be used to bring about regime change in Tehran. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. They don't have a nuclear weapon at this point of time, unless that earthquake in Baluchistan was indeed a nuclear test. They don't have one, but look what's happening to them. So eschewing nuclear weapons has not prevented 45 years of economic sanctions, terrorism, subversion, and the endless threat of attack, including nuclear attack from Israel and the United States. The only variable would be that if Iran did have a nuclear weapon, such attacks could not be mounted, for the reason I gave earlier, that there's no attacks on Pyongyang, no attacks on North Korea, and there never will be. Iraq was invaded because it did not have weapons of mass destruction, not because it did have weapons of mass destruction. If it had had them, it could never have been invaded. So to me, this is ABC. And of course, I make the point, I remake it, Peter. Any nuclear attack on Iran will be the end of Saudi Arabia, the end of Qatar, the end of the United Arab Emirates, the end of Bahrain. You don't have to be a nuclear scientist to realize that the fallout from a nuclear attack on Iran would affect all of its neighbors. A simple leak from a nuclear power plant in Ukraine decades ago was killing sheep on hill farms in Wales of cancer decades later. Chernobyl was not a nuclear bomb. It was a nuclear leak. A nuclear bomb 1,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima will spread its blast, its nuclear fallout, and its nuclear winter over all of the principalities that just gave Donald Trump untold gold and diamonds. He went home scarcely able to carry the gifts that they had given him. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Israel is threatening implicitly Iran with nuclear attack. America has explicitly threatened them with nuclear attack, although Grok is oddly trying to deny this. I saw with my own eyes the post from Donald Trump in which he promised that there would be a nuclear response if Iran closed the Straits of Hormuz. So it's an explicit threat to fire nuclear weapons at Iran. So if I was running Iran, we'd already have a nuclear weapon. Thanks, Peter, for your very cogent call. MOATS, big donors tonight. A big shout out to tonight's top donors who've been on to the MOATS.tv website. Robert Brown, Johnny Comerford, David Mitchell, Christopher Webb, and Bruce Marmie. So generous tonight. Thank you very much indeed. And make sure that you all don't leave tonight without giving me $1, €1, or £1. Jody is in Oregon on the Iran-Israel-US issue. And she is a first-time caller, I think. Jody, welcome to the show in any case.
Hi, George. I'm a second-time caller. Hi. And instead of me stating how currently I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. How would you like to ask an American that is a decent American, a kind person, how would you like to ask us a bunch of questions regarding how we feel in this country about Israel's control of the U.S. government and what we feel needs to be done to save our country? So, can you fire questions?
What a beautiful call. Yeah, Jody, that's a beautiful call and beautifully expressed. And for the record, having toured the United States, north, south, east, and west, the vast majority, 99% of the American citizens that I have met, and I have met many, many thousands of them, are decent and kind people. I'm not just talking about the people who come to my meetings and are sitting in my audience. I'm talking about the people who drive your cab. I'm talking about the people who serve your coffee. I'm talking about the ordinary American, are overwhelmingly decent and kind people. In fact, kinder than almost any people anywhere in the world. So please, nobody mistake my visceral opposition to the role that American government plays in the world with any hatred of America, for there is none from my part. I'd say to them, you frequently exalt your founding fathers. Take note of George Washington himself's warning against permanent entanglements. Nobody could doubt that since Suez in 1956, when the United States last ordered Israel to cease and desist and stop the Suez invasion with Britain and France, since 1956 until now, you have been in a permanent entanglement with a country of 7 million people on the Mediterranean, thousands of thousands and thousands of miles away from the US. There is no logical reason for this. There is no logical reason why you, as a great and mighty country, would allow yourselves to be dragged into a potential world conflagration to please a tiny group of settlers on a tiny piece of land on the Mediterranean. It is madness. Of all the permanent entanglements you could have chosen, this was the most crazy. So shake yourselves free of it. Tell your children that if they are forced to go to war from Israel, no one can calculate the scale of the losses or even who the belligerents will ultimately be. It's not worth it. It's truly not worth it. The state of Israel is not worth the bones of a single Oregon grenadier. It's a kind of madness that American politics is now possessed of, where dozens, if not scores, of American politicians are tweeting, "Pray for Israel." Not one of them issued a prayer for the thousands of American soldiers already in the Middle East and whose lives were put in danger by Israel's attack on Iran. None of them said, "Pray for our boys out there in the Middle East." All of them, like Pavlov's dogs, were expressing their total loyalty, bought and paid for by the Israel lobby in the United States. You are in a situation now, as we are in Britain, where Israel has captured the state, and we have to shake ourselves free of it. unless we want our own state to go down in flames. Jody in Oregon, beautiful call, second-time caller. Colonel Richard is in Texas on the BRICS. Colonel, welcome to the show. We've lost Colonel Richard. I was absolutely intrigued to speak to a Colonel Richard in Texas, hoping it might set the show alight. Let me give you a poll update. A staggering 59,000 people have voted in the poll. On Telegram, 25% say that Netanyahu would have attacked a nuclear-armed Iran. 75% say no. On Telegram, 20% say yes. On the YouTube community poll, 22%, and on the YouTube stream, 24%. So an overwhelming number of a vast poll believe that Netanyahu would not have attacked Iran if it had been nuclear armed. Colonel Richard may well be back on the line. I'm hoping so. Colonel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, George. I'm here. When I was in the Marines on active duty, when I was on active duty, Sun Tzu's Art of War was a required reading for all Marine officers. But it seems that even though we had to read it, many Western military men have not digested the way the Oriental mind thinks. Okay? Sun Tzu said, among other things, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And I believe that's what the BRICS are doing. China, Russia, Brazil, they are sitting back watching the West deplete its military capabilities, firing off $1 million missiles at $100 drones, and steadily degrading their ability to wage kinetic warfare. And all they will have to do, we see it right now. Boeing has laid off thousands. Ford has laid off thousands. General Motors has laid off thousands. John Deere is going under. American farmers are going bankrupt because China has gone to Brazil for soybeans. All China has to do is just sit back and watch until they're ready to pull the trigger, and then we're going to see bread lines in America like we haven't seen since the 1930s. And it's already happening.
Well, I think that's a brilliant analysis, Colonel, and I have no doubt that you are correct. As Napoleon once said, why interrupt your enemy when he's busy making a mistake? And there is no doubt that this is the mother of all mistakes. U.S. involvement in this attack on Iran is the mother of all mistakes. That's already clear, and it's only been happening for, I think, 2 nights. I've been traveling so much I may have lost count, but I think that Iran has only responded twice, and both times with devastating effect. And tonight it is promised that the reply will be more deadly still. So it is a terrible mistake that the empire has made in going down this rabbit hole with the state of Israel. It's a terrible mistake that they have made, confronting Russia with kinetic war, and undoubtedly China, which is not yet involved in any wars, but which is busily becoming the world's biggest economy, having already become the world's biggest manufacturing economy, having already become the world's leading holder of American dollars, with more dollars than the US Treasury. China is making hay. Incidentally, Colonel, the damage already done to the oil markets before the Strait of Hormuz is closed has already guaranteed an absolute bonanza in oil sales for Russia. Russia got considerably richer. as a result of Israel's attacks on Iran's oil fields. An oil field, by the way, which is co-owned with Qatar, America's closest ally. And let's face it, one of Israel's closest allies in the Persian Gulf. Colonel, thanks for your call. Don't be a stranger. We'd love to hear from you regularly. Gaius is in the north of Ireland and wants to talk about the same subject. Gaius, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hello, George. Thanks for having me on. And thank you to you and everybody else speaking for the voice of reason and humanity. So few that we hear, these days. I suppose given the escalations that we've seen in the potential for World War III, where it feels like we're on the precipice right now, and even in this country, this little part of the world that has been ripped apart by religious turmoil and British colonialism for decades, and we now see the rise of right-wing hatred and anti-immigration violence happening all over the country. It feels like, how do we do more beyond boycott, divestment, sanctions? Like, it's starting to feel quite like a hopeless fight. And I mean, we fight to the bitter end for humanity and for peace, but it feels like we're outweighed by the voices that stand against us and the powers and money that they have backing them. It's just terrifying.
No, I urge you most sincerely, and it's a brilliant call, but I urge you most sincerely not to despair. We are winning. Iran is winning. The BRICS are winning. Russia and China are winning. And as you've raised it, let me contribute my tuppence worth to what's been happening in Ballymena, which I found so unspeakable. And I regretted I was away and unable to say much more about it. But the targeting of people with faces of a different color by masked mobs of criminal thugs who were throwing Molotov cocktails through the windows of people's houses. But for the grace of God, nobody was burned to death in those houses. But it may be a matter of time before that happens, and not just in the north of Ireland. Whatever legitimate arguments people have about illegal immigration and the people landing in small boats on the south coast, none of these people who were being firebombed were remotely in those categories, and it would be completely criminal and sinful even if they had been. And it proves the point that I have been trying to make. If you generate violent hatred of asylum seekers, the people who respond with that violent hatred have no way of knowing and have no interest in knowing whether the person they are violently hating is an asylum seeker or even an immigrant. Bellingham is not an immigrant. Kobe Mino is not an immigrant. Anthony Joshua is not an immigrant. The England cricket team are not immigrants. You're not an immigrant if you were born in this country. And most of the immigrants in this country now are legal immigrants, many of whom we asked to come. So I'm against the small boats. I'm definitely against spending 200 quid a night to put them up in a hotel for the rest of time, because that's not a proper use of scarce resources here in Britain. But if I'd been in Ballymena, I would have been standing outside those houses. I would have put my own life and my own blood to defend those people of color, for that is all they were. One of them was a Filipino who's been living in the north of Ireland for decades, works in a local factory. His car was destroyed. His house was threatened. His life was threatened. Well, I would have stood beside him, in front of him. They'd have to kill me before they killed him. And that's what you should be doing, guys. Maybe you are. The good people of the north of Ireland, and the Irish Republic too, have to place themselves as a barrier to protect those whose lives and blood are at risk from this kind of racial hatred. Thanks for giving me the opportunity of saying that. Is this poll going to reach 60,000? It is 59,707 right at this moment. I've got a feeling 60,000 would be a record poll. Alan is on the line in Lebanon on Iran, Israel. Go ahead, Alan.
Good evening, Mr. George. I'm a big fan. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for always standing with oppressed people around the world. I had a question about internal politics in Iran. You know, with the name of the operation of Israel being the Rising Lion, with all its meaning with respect to the Shah and Iran and the Islamic Republic, and the speeches of Netanyahu that are constantly at the Iranian people, how credible of a threat do you think an internal rebellion is inside Iran?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I was recently there. Gayatri and me were there for a few days. Certainly not enough time, and definitely not enough scope to form full judgment on that in any sense. But I'd be amazed if the vast majority of Iranian citizens were not now rallying round the flag, because that's what happens. In the East End of London, everybody hated Winston Churchill, and with very good reason. During the Blitz on the East End of London, when Churchill came to the rubble and the ruins to visit, he got a hero's welcome. Most of the East End were left-wing, many of them communists, but they cheered Winston Churchill when he appeared amongst the rubble. That is what happens when foreigners come to bomb you. You increase the net stock of patriotism rather than decrease it. And the gross unattractiveness of the political alternatives that the West is offering the Iranian people, of course, compounds that phenomenon. The idea that anybody in Iran is itching to return the son, or is it the grandson, of the late Shah of Persia, the most corrupt of all the leaders in the Middle East, and there's a lot of competition for that title, who presided over the SAVAK, the most savage secret police apparatus in the entire Middle East, and there's a lot of competition for that title. The idea that the people of Iran are looking for a return of the Pahlavi dynasty is too absurd for words, and even more absurd is the idea that the Iranian people want these lunatics in the Albanian military camps of the MK to come and rule them with their woman obscurantist leader. The idea that the people of Iran want to be ruled by her, do I have to say more, is completely ridiculous. So my feeling is that the Iranian people will stick with Nurse for fear of something worse, even if they have profound disagreements with the Islamic system in Iran. That's my view. Alan, a new caller in Lebanon, and a new caller in Canada is Shola in Canada on Iran. Shola, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mr. Galloway. How are you doing?
By the grace of God, good, ma'am. What would you like to say?
I'm from Iran, and I've been in Canada for less than 40 years. And I just wanted to say about two things. One is that the question today about a nuclear weapon, if Netanyahu would use it or not, I would imagine 100% he would, because with over 55,000 people killed in Palestine, if they would have put the nuclear weapon, I don't know how many people could be destroyed in Palestine. So he would, no doubt. And I think he would continue as long as he can, because the bullies are together, unfortunately, a state and Israel. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, unfortunately, Iran's leaders are more looking to the past, and unfortunately, West and their politicians are looking for the future. Like they both are living today, but one is looking ahead. Like I feel for these years experiencing, because I grew up in Shah's time, and then I've been in Canada, and what they do, I believe I experience, is that they're living today, but they are almost fabricating their future. They don't 100% put everything for today, and they put maybe 25%, 30% living today, 70% they prepare for the future. So politics, God knows where on earth they are still brewing here, there. So this war is not in one day. They have been brewing it since revolution, which I, as one, was against it. But Iranians, on the other hand, the authorities of Iran, they are living today, but unfortunately, many of them are living in the past. They are living today, but in their heart, in their minds, they are thinking about the past, rather than if two forces are going to be equally fighting each other successfully, they would fight with the same thing. They both need to be having the same mentality. This is such a huge opposite mentality. But I wish for Iran, I pray for Iran. I absolutely hate Israel, United States, and the rest of the states of the world who, out of fear, sit in wherever, in their palaces or in their halls, and witness the injustice happening. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, you've said it very powerfully, ma'am, and I hope you'll call back again, because this show is going to run and run. I agree with much of what you said, but crucially not all of it. I don't know why you formed the view that Western leaders are looking to the future. They're certainly not looking to the future in Iran, because they want to put the monarch back on the throne, who was overthrown 40 years and more ago. And of course, the monarch was only reinstated in Iran because Britain and the United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Dr. Mossadegh. They now try to say they want freedom and women's rights and all this guff in Iran. But there was freedom and women's rights in Iran under Mossadegh's socialist government, and Britain and America overthrew it to reinstate the Shah, who became in turn the greatest of all tyrants. So they're not looking to the future in Iran, they're looking to a return to the past. And as someone who lives under them, like you in Canada, like me in Britain, I'm seldom of the view that my government is looking to the future and is ensuring a better future for my children. I'd be surprised if you are in Canada. Thank you very much, though, Shola in Canada. Another new caller tonight. There have been so many of them, but some things never change. Me and Gayatri, and here she is with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, let me start by reflecting upon our turbulent few days, weeks or months even, because they will feed into the first email of tonight. So 1 week ago exactly, we flew to Moscow days after the terrorist attack, not far from Moscow. So this was the closest the Ukrainians hit Russian targets close to the capital. So leaving us on high alert, but arriving in the capital, perfect as ever, pristine, clean, grand, as we have shared with you before. Indeed, celebrating Russia Day in full glory. And funny that Shola, our previous caller, was talking about Western leaders looking at the future. Western leaders in our part of the West are not looking at the future. We're stuck. We're stuck in the current warmongering and fearing and threat and making its people not look forward. But where we went in Moscow, the Forum of the Future 2050,
They really were looking at
we
the
were
future.
literally looking at the future.
Yeah.
So, and then within hours, when Israel started their attacks on Iran, we were due to fly to Dubai, which is 60 miles from the Iranian coast. So we were left not knowing whether the flight was going ahead or not, and ahead they went. But we had to detour, flying over Pakistan instead of the closed Iranian
Didn't we fly over
airspace.
Afghanistan? I thought it was one of the greatest ironies that the only safe place to be was in the skies of Afghanistan.
Well, we bypassed Iran on that night. I mean, this was hours after Israel started, so needless to say, we had very little sleep, and we arrived in Dubai only for a very, literally 24-hour transit. And then that day when we left Dubai, indeed, all the flights to the region were cancelled, from Iran to Iraq, Lebanon.
We should have stayed in Moscow. I told you that at the time.
It was the finest place. Now, talking about Moscow, our friend here, Helen, writes, "Hi George, it would be really good to let your viewers know how to travel to Russia. I would like to take a holiday there, and the usual websites, they simply say you can't get there at the moment."
No, it's not true.
It's not true.
It's not as easy as it used to be because of sanctions. Nobody is flying Western Airlines to Moscow, but you can still get a tourist visa from your local Russian embassy, and you can still fly comparatively easily to Russia, as long as you've got the requisite visa and you're not committing any crime, you're not committing any offense. They can't stop you from taking a holiday in Russia. And if you do, you'll be very, very happy with it. You can fly, I suppose, the easiest, quickest way, Gayatri, correct me if I'm wrong, through Belgrade.
That's the nearest.
The nearest,
I would say the nearest within Western Europe.
That would be the nearest. The loveliest or most luxurious would be what we did, which is to fly to Dubai and then fly Emirates to Moscow, which has a daily, more than daily flight.
For sure.
And of course, you can also go through Turkey, which equally is not implementing aviation sanctions against Russia. So Belgrade, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar.
Qatar, yeah, let's say the Gulf countries.
Yeah, the Gulf countries. None of them are sanctioning Russia. All of them have got, I mean, we were in Dubai where the Burj Khalifa was lit up in the Russian colors to celebrate Russia's National Day, Russia Day. So don't think that because our countries are in such bad relations with Russia, that is true of the rest of the world. It simply isn't.
It is not. You're right. But having described the itineraries, you will see from the map how ridiculous it is. Coming from the UK, in our case, going all the way to the Gulf and then back north to Russia, to Moscow. Or St. Petersburg would be even more ridiculous because St. Petersburg is very close to the UK, to Western Europe. So it shows the ridiculousness of the current situation, the sanctions policies, because Russia has not suffered from it, and you will see that when you travel to Russia. Visas are in place and mandatory. I would just say have your
Hotel booked.
Hotel booked, have all those
You
papers
need to
in
show
place.
that you've got a booking in a specific hotel.
Correct. So after that, enjoy it. It's amazing. You'll love it.
To be honest, I begged her to stay in Moscow. Let's stay in Moscow. We'll bring the children here rather than go back. Russia, Moscow is the most magnificent capital city in the world. And if you're going to be marooned by a war, well, we're better than Moscow.
Just to finish, the attraction of traveling to sanctioned countries, prior to that, of course, only 1 month ago, we were in Iran. Yeah. Now, that was after the SMO in 2022, the most sanctioned country in the world. And when we went there, it was mind-blowing to see how well they live and how advanced they live, having lived under sanctions for almost 50 years. And then we've all witnessed what they are capable of over the weekend. Or is it the weekend? I've lost track of days as well.
Yeah, it's Sunday. They are enormously capable people, a very young population, and a patriotic one. A section of the population, quite a big one, is intensely religious. They do not regard dying at the hands of the Zionist enemy as an ignoble thing or a waste of life. They believe that it would send them to paradise, to die in the war with Israel. So it's foolish by any metric to take on such a country. If you are, in Israel's case, a country of settlers, of immigrants with American passports, British passports, Russian passports, the vast majority of Israelis are dual citizens of somewhere. They can go back to the countries from which they emigrated to Israel from. Whereas the Iranians have been there for thousands of years. You know more about their ancient civilizations than me. You've been studying it. But we are talking about the oldest human civilizations in the world, in Iran. And you're a settler state from 1948, and you think you can triumph over them? You can't.
You can't. No matter what divisions the people have among them, the pride, the Iranian pride, will trump all that. And it's very clear from the footage and first-hand stories we've seen. So
it's still light outside. Do you think we could get chips?
Well, let's get going to the last call.
Let's get going to the last call. But before that, can I just ask you to follow us on Hats Off? That's 4 Fs on Twitter. Hats Off. O-F-F-F-F-F-F-F-F-F-F. Oh, come up. 4 Fs. Now, you can check out your X feed for our output on Hats Off. Our caller, I'm afraid, cannot be fitted in. We've overshot the target by nearly 6 minutes, and the chips are calling us. Thanks very much for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Tell all your friends about the show tonight. Get them to watch on Catch Up, and God willing, get them to join us on Wednesday. Roger Stone, Trump and Nixon's right-hand man. He'll be interesting on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.